Hello, Spark fans, and welcome back to Advancing Spark, where I have mixed news. So there is some terrible news in that I've broken my favourite team mug, and it's now just a shadow it for myself. But, you know, not the end of the world. I have a little sloth mug, he's keeping me company today. That's all it is in the bad news. The good news is twofold. Number one, it is the Data AI Summit over in San Fran next week, and me and some of the Advancing Analytics crew will be over there with our bags full of various bits of swag and stickers and things like that, and we'll be going around making a nuisance of ourselves. I'll also be doing a session with Denny Lee talking about various weird things. If you've got any questions for that, we'll treat it like an AMA. So any weird and wonderful questions around Delta, around Databricks, around what's it like to work in Spark or be a data engineer, then get your questions in, and we'll do what we can amidst the chaos that session will be. Final bit of good news is I finally got my hands on Unity Catalogue. So I've got it working, I've got it all set up, and I can show you what it's like. And I thought we'll skip the setup stuff for this first video and look at what it actually is, how it works, what the benefit of having Unity Catalogue is. So I've done the hard part, I've got it set up, it's all working, we can register tables, we can play like that. But what is it? Why is it there? What's the point? That's what we're going to run through in this first video, and there's loads of stuff to cover in the world of Unity Catalogue, so expect more videos on this theme, but that's where we're going to start. As always, if you are new around here, don't forget to like and subscribe, don't forget to say hello down in the comments, and if you're already using Unity Catalogue, tell me what you think. What have you found good? What have you found bad? Where does it kind of fit for you in the ecosystem? What does it do that you didn't expect it to? What does it not do that you were hoping it did? Really, really good to hear from how people are finding it. Until then, let's crack on. All right, so first things first, I always like to take a look at the shiny marketing spiel and go, right, what does it say it is? Why does it think it's here? So Unity Catalogue, unified governance for a lakehouse, makes sense. And there's various different things talking about, one, sharing all of your different things that were all siloed in lots of different places in one central metastore. I mean, that just makes a lot of sense. Having a catalog that's unified across things, some kind of Unity catalog. Yeah, I can kind of see where the name came from. So a lot of the stories that are out there currently about Unity Catalog is all about going, you've got like 10 different Databricks workspaces and they're spread across different regions and Azure subscriptions and different cloud providers. Hey, let's just actually build something that can say, well, these all share the same stuff. I can register some Hive tables there and they'll be visible over there. And then we can control access to them from one central plane. That is what we're talking about. That is the whole point, to say we don't want to have separate metastores. We don't want to have the pain of managing our own metastore. We want a centralized cross Databricks workspace catalog. Loads more stuff to build up on top of that. Loads more things it's going to do. But currently, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about essentially a magic Hive store that works across workspaces, to be managed centrally. Again, discover all your data and assets, AI assets in one place. Yeah, makes sense. Easily grant and manage permissions using ANSI SQL, and that seems to be a big thing. Most of what we're talking about when we start using Unity, we're talking about using grant. We're using grant usage, grant select on. The way we normally kind of do all of our security in the SQL world is now the same language that we're using in Unity Catalog. So we're just writing SQL statements to grant people access to various different things. Same as table access control. It's a basically table access control that has gone mad and grown and got loads of extra stuff in there. And then things like Delta sharing and other things grow on top of it, and we can start talking about those other things once we have Unity Catalog in place. So that's like the little starting point. Now, the thing that we need to know about, which is a brand new concept if you're in Azure, and it's kind of old hat if you're in AWS, is an idea called the account console. And that sits behind a lot of what we're talking about in Unity Catalog. So some of the stuff that you have to do to get started in Azure currently is all around just giving yourself access to go into this new thing called the account console. So I've already set that up. I can show you what that looks like. So I've got this thing, accounts.azuredatabricks.net, and then my list of workspaces. And you can see I've got several workspaces in here. And you can see people like Zach have gone in and created workspaces using all my money. But whatever, there's loads of workspaces in there. Everything that is in your ecosystem, everything that is in your AD tenant can be seen here, all hooked together. So I've got cross-subscription view of every single different Databricks workspace actually in my ecosystem, which is by itself actually a very useful thing to be able to see. So this whole idea, this whole separate parent plane to all my different workspaces is kind of a background of how Unity Catalogue works. So we're in here, I've got all my workspaces, I can see all of that. Got a few bits that I can see over here, so I can go into data, and you can see I've got several different meta stores. Now you can see I've got several all in the same region, and it really tells you not to do that. It keeps telling you, please don't create them in the same region. You should have one per region. That just makes sense. And there's a little bit of a limitation here, is that when you create a meta store, it only allows you to attach workspaces to that meta store that are in the same region. And that's the way it works. So we create a meta store. We say, this is my meta store for UK West in this case, or Europe, or US East, or whatever the region I'm talking about. And then various different Databricks workspaces in that region I can associate to that meta store. So my meta store is the parent that brings them together. I had some trouble setting them up. Some of that was my fault. Lots of that was my fault. But in this case, I've got this one called Advancing Meta Store. It's tied to an ADLS Gen 2. So I had to give it a storage account and say, this is the storage account for this meta store. Now that is fantastic for me. The main reason being, if I store any data there, so if I hit save as table, if I accidentally write a table to it, this is saying this is the lake I want you to use as this is basically DBFS. So people aren't going to put their data into DBFS when nothing else can see it and there's no security and it's terrible. If people do just save as table, it's going to go into a lake that I design and I can look after. So that alone is a fantastic step forwards for me. So there's some setup I had to give Databricks access to it. You need to register storage credentials, that kind of stuff. I'm the owner. And then we can go into workspaces and we can see I have manually got in and said, look, these two workspaces, they should be hooked up to that meta store. Created that join, or created that integration to say, look, if I go into Advancing Unity, I want this to be using this Advancing Meta Store catalog. If I go into another DBX workspace, named very imaginatively, I want that also to be sharing that same meta store. So those guys are in sync in terms of what they can see. I can go in and I can add more workspaces and have a play with that. We'll have a look at that when we do the setup video. So that's kind of like the main thing to know. And I can play with users. I can go and set other things up. I can give it more credentials and things to use. But essentially that is the account console. The account console is this new idea where I can see all my workspaces. And that is where I can control the creation of the meta store object. It's high level catalog of all the things I'm looking after. So we can go in, we can see I've got that I've got that lake, my Advancing Meta Store, ADLS store that I've created my meta store to. I've got my UK West folder. I've got this Advancing Meta Store folder. And then I can see inside there, it's blurred out. Oh, I can see in there, it's not blurred out there. Well, that's fantastic security, isn't it? I can go in, I can see I've registered some tables. I can see they're also blurred out because it's a GUID. And I can see I've got some data in there. Essentially, this is where it's storing my Delta tables if I just go, save some table to my catalog. So it's creating and maintaining and managing the data for me. Essentially, if you have any managed tables, if you have any tables that you want Hive to look after as its own table, and you save it over there, it's going to be written to there in that lake, looked after, abstracted using an ID, so you can change the name of it, which is actually quite useful. And then it's just a Delta table inside there. So we have this idea, we have some storage that we have to give each meta store and say, this is your storage. This is where you can keep your extra information. And then we manage that through the account console. So once we've done that, we can go into a Databricks workspace. This is my Advancing Unity workspace, and this is, you saw I had that associated to that particular catalog. It means I can go in here, I can see actually what's going on there. Oh, is it turned on? There we go. I can go and make sure I've got, what data have I got in there? Oh, it's because I deleted things. That makes sense. So by default, when you create a Unity catalog, a meta store, it has one catalog in there called main. So you have this general placeholder called main. Inside there you have databases, inside there you have tables. Now for me, that's all shifted one side, coming from a SQL place. I'm used to three-part naming. And that's what we're going to start seeing with Unity Catalog. We've got this idea of a catalog, and inside catalog many databases, and inside my databases many tables. Now, if you're from a SQL background, that's basically databases, schemas, and tables. The same thing. Doesn't matter what you call those three parts of it. You've got a top part, a parent, various different containers, and then tables that live inside those containers. In this case, it's catalogs, databases, and tables. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and create a new catalog, and then we can create a database inside that catalog, and then we can add tables into that catalog, and we'll see them be created, be maintained, and we can go and have a play with them. And then, all importantly, we want to be able to switch to a different Databricks workspace and see the same things. Be able to see that they're shared, be able to explore across the two of them. So we're going to do that. So I've just grabbed, there was an example notebook, I've pulled some of it apart, played around with a few different things. I'm going to just have a play with some of these things. So let's get rid of all the results. Yeah. Firstly, showing those catalogs. I'll see I've only got those catalogs. So my Hive Metastore, that is your default internal legacy version of the Hive Metastore. The main, that's the default one that's created by my new Metastore. So that is using Unity, and I've got samples. Samples I can have a play with. In this case, I'm going to create a new catalog. This is the top part of my three-part naming, and that's going to create a called playcat, which is, I was going for catalog, and it just sounds really weird as a playcat, but I'm going to stick with the name now. Why not? Then creating a database called my employees database, and I can add various tables into my employees database. So I've now got two-part naming for my databases. So inside that catalog playcat, I want a new database called employees. Again, if you're not using Unity Catalog and you haven't got it turned on and you're not using a catalog enabled cluster, which we'll come on to, that command won't work. I'll say, I don't know what that cluster is. The catalog namespace doesn't exist. But this is all good. We're all happy. We can now see we've got playcat in there. And we can see we've got employees inside my playcat catalog. That's all nice. It's creating these objects. No biggie. It's the same as Hive, but we've just got this extra table there. This extra part of my naming. And we can then go and create a table, right? We say inside playcat, inside employees, go and just create a basic table, insert into that table some values. In this case, it's partitioning by it. So when we look at the Delta table, we'll see some partition columns as well in there. And again, fine, let's go and we can even just do a quick select in there, prove that it all works. That's just a SQL table. There's nothing crazy there. From. Again, remember, three-part naming now. I've got my catalog, I've got my database, and I've got my table. It all hangs together. Goes off. Shock horror, I can select from my table. Nothing mad there. I go into data. I can now see I've got that quick start table. And that's exactly the same as any other table we can register with Hive. Again, nothing mad there. Things are fairly straightforward. But it's just this idea that we've got this extra container. We can go and create some other stuff in there. I'm creating another table just to show that we've got it. And then we've got some SQL commands that we can have a play with. Firstly, I can now use the use command. So I can say, well, actually, I don't want to use three-part naming for everything. I just wanted to assume I'm in that playcat catalog. I don't want to have to tell it each time. So by doing that use catalog, that sets my session context to be using that catalog. So I can now use two-part naming. Again, let's go quickly down there. Do a quick, if we jump onto there, do select star from employees. It knows I'm in that playcat catalog. It happily goes to it. It doesn't go, it's missing a third part. If we don't have that, it's going to assume I'm in that default main one. It's going to assume that's all in there. So we've now got concepts that we can use with the catalog to set that context. I can create a view, again, using two-part naming. So because I'm in that playcat, we're going to see it created in there. I can create view objects. I can do all the stuff I can normally do in Hive. And if I go into my data, I can see these objects are just created inside there. Nice and easy. So first test, we've got this new catalog. We can go and have a check. Does that exist in my other workspace, which is also linked into this Unity catalog? I've got this another DBX workspace. I can hop over here. I can log into it. See what's going to happen inside of here. Have a look in my data. And there we go. I've got the same things. I've got playcat, employees, and I've got those tables. But let's challenge that a little bit. Make sure I'm not cheating. We're going to go in here. I'm going to create another view with a different name. So just to make sure that we can create an object over here. So go quick view with a different name is in there inside my advancing Unity workspace. If I hop back over onto the other side, should I be able to say if we hop off that and go back in, look at employees, quick view with a different name. They are synced up. They're pointing at the same thing. Now, there's an even fancier thing that I have not told you about. I don't have a cluster turned on, and I can look at the meta store, which is frankly amazing. So big change there. I don't have to wait for a cluster to turn on to see what's been registered in my metastore, and then wait for it to start, and then refresh it, and then wait for the Spark context to come up before I can actually get a list of my tables. You can actually just go in and view them. Now, not everything works. It's not going to give you a sample of your data because that has to read the data. But you can go and have a look at the structure. You can read the metadata that's held within the metastore itself. So that itself is just super useful from a, what was that called again? Without having to turn things on. It's really depressing how excited I was when I saw that. I was like, yes, come on. But even so, shows a real nice bit of functionality that we have these intrinsically hooked up Hive metastores without having to have an external Hive metastore that we then need to configure and maintain and look after. We just have this simple unified catalog across the two of them. Nice, easy, great. Okay, now everything I've done so far, that is all using managed tables. So what we'll see is in that kind of, in the lake that we had, see it there, it's all hidden away, because I've got some extra tables. I've got tables that have been, as I've added those 2 extra tables, it's gone and created them for me. Now I'm a little bit worried because I dropped those 2 tables and they're still there. But even so, we can go and have a play, we can see that data being managed. Now the other piece, the other bit I wanted to go and quickly look at is actually over on the other side. So this is back in, still in Unity, in my advancing Unity workspace. I've switched over to use Databricks SQL, Databricks SQL. And in this case, I've got a SQL endpoint that's turned on. We can go and have a look in there. And when we go into the data experience here, we get a different experience in the Databricks SQL side of things now. So we can go and have a look. We've got PlayCat in there. We can go dig into it, get this view of my different databases that I've got. Go into my database. I can see my various different tables and views. And I can go and dig into it. And I got a lot more information here. This has been slowly getting richer behind the scenes anyway, but just having an idea of these different things and getting the full metadata behind each of those tables and what we can do with it. Being able to manage permissions and manage the granting of different permissions just through the GUI is just really nice, and actually is coming into its own now that this applies it across the users of that same Unity catalog. We've got the history view if we're using a Delta table. This is actually a Delta table. You can see got a little Delta logo. That needs to obviously run the query and go and look at it. And recently announced, there's a public preview of Lineage. This is where we can see what's pulled things from it, what's gone upstream, what's gone downstream, how it's actually used that data. Now, I've not had to play with that. I've not set that up, so I can't show you Lineage yet. That's another video. We'll talk about that in the future. But even so, yeah, some interesting, useful stuff. There we go. That is the Delta history, just shown to us a little bit nicer. And again, we can actually go and this is the ID column. Nothing particularly special there. That's just updating the Hive metastore. But we used to actually have to write an annoying update table, alter column, add a comment, SQL script to manage and maintain that metastore and to document our various columns. We've now can just do it and it manages itself and it's much easier. We still don't have all the information I want here. Yeah, we can go and manage our comments on the table level. It's still not fully a data catalog. It's still not something that we can associate business owners to and pin documents to and link to other places where they can go and get more information. We can't gather data profiling steps. There's other things that I want to see in this in the future. Absolutely. It's still a preview product and it's still very new. But in terms of improving on what we currently have for Hive, there's loads of stuff in here, which is just better and nicer and quicker to get started with and quicker to work with and easier to see what's going on. Easier to manage all the different things. So in terms of the promises, in terms of that first marketing splash page of what is it? Why have we got Unity Catalog? This quite simple goal of unifying the various different Hive metastores across all my Databricks workspaces so we can see across the data scientists and the data analysts and the data engineers, rather than having one giant mega workspace with lots of different intricate permissions set up. We can say, well, that's your workspace. That's your workspace. You guys don't even need to talk to each other, but they can share vital information and documentation. The engineers can be registering tables and they're then visible and usable by the data analysts and data scientists. The ecosystem is a lot tighter coupled. And hopefully it's going to get better and bigger and do more stuff and be able to register more different types of data and loads of things coming on top of that. But for now, as a starter, there's lots of stuff in there, lots of stuff that we can build and lots of stuff that we can see. And yeah, that's about all I wanted to run through for now. Now, absolutely, playing around with the preview, there are quirks. There are things you need to set up. There's playing around with there's an update to the Databricks CLI called the Unity Catalogue CLI extension to Databricks, which is needed to configure some certain things. There's little bits of calling some CLI commands to set up connections for the first time. There's a little bit of making sure that you're syncing users over to the account console, which needs the setup of the SCIM endpoint. There is just a little bit of setup that needs doing the first time you turn this thing on. And it's a little fiddly. But we can run through that as a separate session. We can go and look how you do it. But I don't even know if it's going to be as complicated as that by the time that Unity Catalog actually reaches GA. It's still a preview product. Hopefully the story will get slicker and slicker and slicker as we go. Even if it isn't, you only do it once when you first set up your entire AD tenant to be able to use it. That's not the end of the world. And yeah, apart from that, it's really nice being able to see the Hive metastore from a different workspace without having a cluster turned on. Sad how excited I am, but loads and loads of stuff that then means we can achieve and gives us so much more architectural flexibility. And yeah, just really nice to see things improving and some stuff appearing in it. Now, other stuff to talk about. Permissions model. We need to look at how we actually manage all these different ones and what the new options available to us are. Delta sharing. How we can now just flick a switch, turn on Unity Catalog as a Delta sharing server, and then start having a look at how we do that. How that fits into mesh architectures and all that kind of stuff, even when it's cross-subscription. If we can look into the more detailed things and go dig into the Lineage preview and see how it can automatically capture that lineage as we do transformations between our various different registered Hive tables. Well, does that mean we have to use Hive tables for all of our data engineering? Maybe. But if that's the cost, but it comes with a load of benefits, maybe that's okay. Loads and loads of things that we can be looking at. Again, probably be a week or two until we dig into it because we've got the Data AI Summit over in San Fran. But loads of things. Hopefully this gives you a good little overview of where to start and what is out there. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know any questions that you guys have. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers.